Welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast with Chris and Stephen of the Purple Mountain Spiritual and Wellbeing Centre, connecting with like-minded souls and rediscovering ourselves in this time of conscious awakening. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Collective Awakening podcast. We are live tonight on Facebook. Just want to welcome absolutely everyone. Chris and Stephen of the Purple Mountain, we're with you. An absolute pleasure to welcome our friend and medium Jenny Moore as well. We've spoken to Jenny many times. And many people, I'm sure, have watched Jenny's demonstrations over the years, but might not have been privy to the many teachings and her story as well. We did a few podcasts. If you want to check out our channel on YouTube, we did actually 2 previously with Jenny, really interesting about her journey to mediumship. So if you're interested in that, please check it out. But it's absolute pleasure to welcome her and come together for a very important subject that we feel, and things really that the 3 of us have talked about mostly in the garden of the Purple Mountain before a service or something. Yeah. And now it's time for him to be brought to the forefront. So welcome, Jenny. Great for you to share your time. And just as we're talking really this evening, we want to be talking about mediumship and sort of the changes that are occurring. And really when we're talking about energy, and I want to start somewhere that's quite an unusual place to start, because I was thinking about most of your demonstrations and people would say, and first of all, I feel that there's a lot of upliftment. Now, yeah. Now, how important do you feel for energy, whether that's in a service, people sitting, a circle, is laughter and lifting those vibrations in terms of energy?
I think it's massive. I really do think it's, I mean, we can either do it, shall we say, the old way, which is stand there rooted in one position, and because we've got, say, I don't know, let's say 50 people looking at you, and you're conscious of those 50 people looking at you. So I think sometimes that really dampens your confidence in some way, because obviously you've got people looking and not everybody wants to loosen up and be who they need to be. Now, I remember many years ago, again, when I was just starting off doing the services, and I was one of those mediums who just stood there and do what we've all been taught, to stand and just give. And I got to a point where I weren't enjoying it. And I didn't feel the confidence to speak my mind, or to speak what's not my mind, but to spirit's mind, because I just couldn't move. So I came home one night and I said to Spirit, I can't do this. And obviously we had this conversation. They said, well, you follow us. So, and I pulled away from the church that I was at the time. I pulled right away from everything. And I sat in my conservatory for about a year. And they said, we'll teach you our way. You do, you say, and you act exactly as we give it to you. Because all these spirit people are coming to tell you their story. And every one of them has a story. And just as yourselves, if you were in the spirit now, like I've asked many a time, what would you want me to say about you? As you know, as people now on the earth plane, if you was in spirit, would you want me to walk on and say, oh, hello, my name's Stephen and I love you all? Or do you want to come in, because spirit have got more life in them than we will ever know? So when they step in from that spirit realm, they are booming with it. And I mean, they are doing backflips because they want to prove their existence. They don't come. I mean, obviously, everybody's got a different personality. You might, but I'm not everybody's medium. I'm not everybody's spirit's medium. And I have had 1 or 2 that have come in and gone, oh, hello. But more often than not, I get drawn to the people of the spirit that are who want to show who they are, who want to be what they was, and they want to come in and they want to prove that. And the only way to do that is because they also understand that on the earth plane, it's tough enough as it is. It really is a tough job to be here at the moment, which many people are going through. So therefore, we need that uplifting. And spirit understand that. They're not daft. They know exactly. They've all been here before. They know what war is. They know what hatred is. They know what every situation everybody's had on this planet, somebody's passed with it. So they know the level of dense energy that we are at this moment, and they know that we need uplifting, and they know that we are coming in a time where things are massively on the change, and the only way we can do that is by keeping that energy nice and high. So if I, as a medium, stand there and just say, well, spirit's here and they said they love you, well, I can say that to everybody. If that was the case, if I was one of them mediums who said, spirit are here, they're all shiny and bright, and they're all love you, that's the end of the service for me. Because I could say that message to 10 people and there's no differentiation but everybody in the spirit wants to show their love in a different way. Whether it's funny stories of how they acted, what's gone on that day, whatever they want to bring, that is my duty to spirit. And if they say, stand there and look boring, that's exactly what I do. If they say to me, I was a ballerina, I want you to be a ballerina, I will be the ballerina. Because at the end of the day, it's I'm doing my work for spirit. I don't care now. And I've learned that over the years. It's not a case of I don't care who's sat in the congregation. It's what their opinion of me is. I've learned to lose that. And therefore, if spirit stand there and say, I was an alcoholic and I want you to stand here and be drunk, then that's what we're doing. Because all their beautiful personalities must come forward. Because in that is where the proof is. So if they come in and they're funny and they're witty, they know what they're doing. Nobody in this world will tell me any otherwise. They know exactly what they're doing. They know how to uplift a congregation or a venue. They know what they're doing. They know what's required. They know the energy that's come through the door. And their job is to balance that and to bring the healing, the counselling, or whatever it might be needed for that whole event or congregation. They know what to do. So, and it is that the duty for me of the medium, not to say do what I do. I'm not saying do what I do. I'm saying feel what the energy tells you to do and be it. Stop worrying about whether the president likes you or the committee like you, or I don't care. Because you know what? You don't have to book me again. You don't have to book me again because I'll get work somewhere else. Because spirit will always find me work if I do right by them. And I do believe that.
Yeah, you make some really important points there, Jenny. I think about on the journey, not just as a medium, but anything in life, is letting go of what people think is very powerful, because it can actually, it comes to me, that term seed of doubt. And once, you allow them little seeds in, then they're not only going to affect you mentally, but they're going to affect your connection, because
and it affects how you stand up. I mean, standing up and speaking is the hardest thing in the world. We all know that. We've all done it. We've all had to get over that barrier. But it is the hardest thing, just to loosen up a bit and enjoy it. Not too many mediums, and I've heard so many mediums say, God, I can't. I get so worked up, or I don't enjoy standing up. I can't imagine why you don't enjoy standing up. Not because but I absolutely love it. Because once I'm in that energy of spirit, I don't care who's sat in front. I don't care if the whole congregation are all mediums. Years ago, when I was up and coming, if I thought there was a medium sat there, I would stutter all the way through my service because they were judging me. Now I stand there and I go, bring it on. Because actually, I ain't doing it for you. Because if I can walk away from any place that I've worked and spirits say, job done, I'm done. I know that my work has been done for that night. I can go home happy.
Yeah, because I wanted to share something, Jenny, if that's all right, that we've talked about a couple of times now. And it's sort of in the terms of the roles of who you're working with, which I know is very important to you, to all of us in the sort of our journey. And in terms of the word praise, and it's like, not only we were talking about our guides, and I know you mentioned it a few times to me, saying if you were to say like your guide come close at the end of the night and said, "Oh, you did a blinder there, Jenny. It was amazing tonight," you would be questioning what's going
Yeah.
on.
I mean, I went to the church many. You know, I have Margaret and Mandy come with me, and the ladies have always come with me over the 25 years. I've always said to them one thing: if you come with me, you must be straight. If you see any ego in me, you must slap it down. Anyway, so Mandy and Margaret's been coming out with me for many years, as you know. And this was about 12 years ago. And we went to a church. We come out and we had a blinding night. And to be fair, it don't matter what came out of my mouth, it was bang on. And I came out and I got in the car and we was eating our chips. I sat there and I said, oh, I can't get over how banging that I was tonight. And from the back seat, I heard from Margaret, wind your neck in. It wasn't you who was doing it. And you know what? That has always stuck with me. But even from there, now, I never get any of my guides who walk up to me at the end of the night and go, oh, blimey, Jenna, what a cracking night we've had with you tonight. They never, ever say, they just, and as soon as I'm finished, I say, thank you, and they say, see you tomorrow. Out, they've gone. We don't have this backslapping, you've done brilliant, we love you. Oh, thank God that he gave us you as our human. None of that. It's just, thank you, good night. Everybody goes home. The moment any of my guides say to me, oh, what a cracking night we've had tonight, I would have to stop and really pull it all in. I'd actually do all my checks all over again to make sure there was no imposter, there was no trickster. Because for me, it is so important that even because you get to a point where you know your guides and you should know their energy. So you should know them the moment they step in. And that is so important because, and I always teach it as, if get to know your energy first as the medium, because any spirit that walks in after that, you're going to know there's a difference. Then you understand all your guides and who your people that you're working with. Again, if there is an imposter, there's something about it that will just make you understand. It's how they speak, how they move. There's just something that makes you say, close it all down and let's reopen. Something's not right. And once you get to that, you feel confident. Not to say I'm right every time, but you get confident in the fact that you are working with the right guides. And also knowing which side, because I don't think many people understand which side they're working with neither.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Just want to touch upon before we move into the light and dark. Just want to hear your opinion, Jenny, really, as somebody that's worked in the movement for a long time. There's a lot of changes that is happening in the vertical commas, the spiritual movement, the churches, the centers. In your opinion, on the energetic side, what do you think is happening? Why are churches emptying? Why are they becoming quiet? What's happening on the energy side? What's going on? What do you think's going on with the centers and the churches as a medium's perspective?
But I honestly do feel as if many years ago, and I'm going to put my neck out there and say it because it's what I feel, but I do believe there's certain places, and maybe it's the SNU, but I do think they've opened the doors to lower energies. And I think it's the lower energies that are running the show. And that's why we don't have to put the protection up. That's why they're saying to you, don't do the protection, don't do your grounding, don't do your censoring, don't do your prayers. Why? Because to me, those are all the foundations that I was taught. Those are all the foundations that we've all been taught. Now, all of a sudden, we don't need any of that. Why? I just can't understand, why don't we need those foundations? Why are we not saying a prayer before and after a service? Why are we not securing that place and protecting it for those people who are coming to a service who don't understand spirit? We're opening them up and we're anchoring energy to them. And it is our job as mediums and the committee and the churches and the centres to protect that place before anybody walks into it. And yet, you can walk into any, for any of us, and as mediums yourselves, you know, you've walked into churches or centres, and it's not been right. The energy is not right. And for me, I think we're moving into this field of mixing the two together. And it's all right to play with Ouija boards, and it's okay to delve in other things that, for me, I would class as on the lower realms. Nobody seems to just want to work with spirit. Like it's, oh, well, it's only spirit. I find that difficult. And I feel like there's no understanding of what just spirit is. And I think everybody's on this, let's do it quick. Everybody wants to learn it quick so they can all go off and do it quickly. There's no foundation. And I think now it's starting to show. And once you start bringing all these qualifications in, and let's all have a badge, you know, because that way then it shows if you can afford to buy a badge by going to these places, you too can be a medium. But we know it takes many, many years to sit in the silence. I went and sat in the development class, and we could sit there for 2 years. I never spoke. You know, I mean, and the pioneers back in the day, they could sit there for years upon years and get nothing. But their dedication to sitting is what made it work. But we don't seem to do. Everybody's a medium in 12 weeks. And to me, I just find it a little bit, it's sad, but I do think this is where, if we're going to talk about the lower entities and the lower energies and the lower realms, of course they don't want you to learn your prayers and your protection and your grounding and your centering. Because if you did, you'd have some common sense about you. And of course they don't want you to sit in a circle and sit in a development class for over a year or 18 months and learn the basics. Of course they want to rush you through the door in 12 weeks and get you as a working medium. Of course they do. Because that way then it takes your mind off what the energy is actually doing. So for me, there's a lot going on at the moment that's particularly I don't want to be mixed in. I like what I do, and I go to the places that I get told to go to. But I've just got to a point where I don't know if it's because I'm getting an old lady or what, but I'm quite happy now just to say, no, it's not for me, and move forward, because I don't have to prove it's not a case of proving what I can do. But I've just got to a point where I'm not putting up with the bull anymore. Because it's time to stand up and stand up for spirit. As the hymn says, stand up for spirit. So let's do it. It's about time that we start pulling our finger out and actually standing up for spirit, for the highest and the brightest. Because if that
do you think
case,
as well, sorry, Jenny, do you think as well on the other side, you know, we talk about medium and people that come into churches. What about something that me and Chris got brought into the work? Because we sat in a home circle for 7 years. We just sat with spirit, had no expectation, just sat in the energy, meditated. But I think one of the big foundations of anybody wanting to work with spirit is the understanding of energy. And I think even those that are running churches, running centers should have that foundation, should have that understanding. It's not just standing up and address in you know, being a committee member or running a church. You've got to have that understanding about energy clearing, light and dark, and prayer, music, atmosphere, energy, because it's not just the medium's job turning up on a night and bringing the energy. A church, a center has to be ready as well. 9 times out of 10 it isn't. It's not. Very bluntly, it's not.
It's not. And I absolutely agree with you, because I think everything, the whole scene has got to be set. You know, you do services, and it takes us all day to prepare for a service.
Yeah.
People don't understand that. You know, I mean, I don't go out when I'm doing a service or an event or whatever I'm doing. I'm not out gallivanting all day. And I'm preparing in my own head. I might just be doing whatever I'm doing, but I'm taking the time out to mentally prepare for going out. Whether it's 1 hour service or a 2 hour service, it matters not how long the time is. It's about the preparation, but it's also correctly saying but the whole church should be therefore correctly prepared.
Yeah,
And I really don't think that they are.
I think it's.
Sorry,
Sorry, Jenny. It's just the I was thinking there when the early days of the Purple Mountain, it's something we learned from the other side of things about. For example, is a space not running around putting chairs out and all that half an hour before a service. It will be prepared on the day as early as possible,
yeah,
and ready and left and prepared, and that's all. Like you said, that other side of the preparation is really important, and something even as a medium that you can't account for the space that you're walking into. You can prepare yourself best you can, but that's where it's 50-50, isn't it? That's where you're making almost a contract when you come together that way.
And your spirit team, they know what the energy is going to be, because they can see that, but they're not going to stand there and say to me, "Oh, Jenny, the energy's a bit in there tonight, it's a bit crap," because obviously then you're going to walk into that with that frame of mind. You're going to walk into there and you've got to try and shift that energy. I mean, it would be nice if spirit was to say to me now and again, you know what I mean? They have given me sort of the heads up, but more often than not, 99% of the time, we've just walked through the door and you can cut it with a knife and you think, blimey, we're going to have to dig deep here. But each and every time they come out and they spirit dig deep. I might have to dig deep, but they dig even deeper. And they always dig us out of it. But we shouldn't have to. The area, every church and every centre, and I know a lot of centres, they can't go in 3-4 hours before. They have to go in that hour before. But again, there's nothing to stop them. Now, when I ran our centre, Whispering Angels, many years ago, myself and Gloria used to go in and we used to open with a prayer before anybody else got in there. Because we knew there was people in there all week, whether it's kids or old ladies or whatever they'd used it for that week. And we would go in every week and open with a prayer. And as we finished, we say, "Thank you very much for everybody," and we'd close everything down as we walked out the door. And we would prepare that room. We used to go in there at 6 o'clock and take the service at 7:30, but do some healing and things beforehand, as many churches do. But we prepare the ground for them healers to start work. At 6:30, we would go in there and we would put the candles out. We'd make it nice. We'd make it homely in the half an hour that we had and open with prayer. And that is, and I mean, obviously, if it needed cleansing, we would take some incense with us or something of that nature, or some essential oils, but to put them round if we couldn't burn it. There's always other ways of clearing a space. And I think it's so important now that I think this is why a lot of the churches are losing a lot of the congregation, because people don't feel welcome. And that is sad. And I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this go, "Well, our church is good." I hope it is. But testament is to how many congregation members you've got and whether or not they like coming, or are they just coming because there's a favourite medium on. You know, and I think we've really, really got to dig deep, because otherwise it's all going to go underground. It's going to be going back into the houses. It's going to go back into whatever space we can find. Because, I mean, 15, 20 years ago, when I started off Whispering Angels, well, it's longer than that, but when it started coming out of the churches then, and that's why we opened up in the centre. We was the only third one in the northwest. You know what I mean? So it started coming out in 2004 out of the churches. Everywhere you look now, we've got a centre, which is great. But are they prepared? Do whoever runs it know what they're doing? You know, and if somebody does come in with an issue, are they just going to pack them off and send them home and tell them it's personal responsibility? You know, somebody comes in the right state, just because there's a medium coming on and there's a service to be had, do you send that person home and tell them to, we'll ring you in the week or something? Again, everything about what we do should be done with compassion and empathy. And if we can't show our fellow man that compassion and empathy, then as far as I'm concerned, job's done. I'm done with it.
Yeah, I think something I talk about with Stephen quite a lot is that I found myself falling into is, the only way I could put it is giving spiritual excuses for bad behavior. And actually, instead of looking things how they are and saying, well, actually, that's disrespectful, you know, whether that's to the work you're doing, to the energy, and just saying it how it is. Well, you know, sometimes, like I said, I've found myself do this many a time, make excuses for certain things. And you're like, you've got to say it as it is, because at the end of the day, we're working with truth here.
Yeah.
That's what we're working with. So if we start going into covering things up, we're going into denser energies, lower energies, just by doing that.
And that's exactly what's happening. Because it's not a case of speaking your mind and upsetting somebody.
Yeah.
You speak your mind, you speak your truth. I've always said to people, you're carrying that load because you won't speak your truth. And you're dilly-dallying around the essential points, which is, if something's not right, speak it. Now, I've fallen into that. We all have. We've all walked into somewhere and gone, ugh, this is a bit rough, or there's something not right here. And not wanting to bring it up because you don't want to come across as being a stirrer. But I feel as if I'm happy in myself now to say, no, actually, something's not right here. Over there's not right, or that corner's not right, or you've just had somebody sit there that wasn't right. You know, I mean, I've gone to churches when they've done healing and they've done an exorcism just before the service. At the back of me. You know what I mean? So if they're doing an exorcism or a clearance just before the service, what energy is that setting up?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I'm going to open myself up now in that room and actually have all that energy coming around me. So what energy, therefore, are you setting up? I've been to other churches where somebody's come in and asked for help. And because they were going to commit suicide, the answer was, it's personal responsibility. We've got nobody to see to you. And to this day, it brings tears to my eyes. I went to another church who, again, somebody came in. Well, we don't do any of that here. And it was only because I caught it and I said, get them to sit down. I'll speak to them afterwards. You know, everybody's quite happy to be in charge.
Yeah.
Nobody's got the knowledge.
Yeah. And that's
maybe that's a broad marker. But you know what? I always think if the shit fits,
you can have it the other way around as well, Jenny, which I'm sure you've experienced, where I've walked into places, but whether it be a church centre, wherever, and you go, it looks a bit not what you expect in here, but the energies are fantastic.
Yes.
And the intention is there. So it might not look too pretty to the eyes, but actually, energetically, it's there.
Spirit are doing backflips to prove themselves, because I mean, that's not to say they're all being run shabby, because they're not. There are some out there that are on the ball and they have a nice space and they welcome everybody and they welcome the spirit and everything's just so.
Yeah.
And then you walk into others and you just think, like, and I mean, I've worked in some places where you wipe your feet on the way out, but I've had some of my best nights because the energy was right. You know, so I think that sometimes having a cleaner place, shall we say, as in the churches and centres, sometimes got the worst energy in them. Yeah. Because even though it looks nice and shiny, not everything that shines and glows is where it needs to be.
Spot on. Absolutely.
You know, I mean, they do say even that the poorest beggar can be of the kindest heart. You know, so, you know, I go everywhere with the same mental attitude. We're here to work. And that's what I do. And regardless of what the energy is in there, I try then to put my energy bigger and better than what the energy in the room is. And I put myself and spirit in that cocoon. That is what I'm doing, preparing beforehand. So every time we walk into that church, wherever it might be, I'm preparing that cocoon, and spirit are as well. We're in that cocoon of safety, because I've got to think of all them spirit people that are going to come through my energy. And I cannot put them at risk, because you've got people in the room that may have come with, and it's not the congregation's fault neither, because they're coming with anxieties and depressions and upsets. They're coming with anger on us and disturbed spirit. They are coming with that. But on the night, we're there to do our duty to spirit. Spirit understand that, and they prepare the ground. But wherever we're going, they've got to prepare. They've got to meet us 50% of the way. Spirit have always said that to me. Meet us 50% of the way, and we will take you the rest.
And I think the other thing, Jenny, as well, that I've just come to an understanding of now is that you should never leave anywhere feeling worse than you came in,
No,
or you should never feel that it's come at a cost of you physically or spiritually in any way. You should feel really on top of the world. Of course, you've traveled and you use a bit of physical energy that'll need topping up, but if you're leaving anywhere and you really aren't feeling good, you're feeling like you can drop, then something isn't quite right to me.
yeah. I mean, to be fair, I've got to say that I've not had that many occasions. I've had one or two over 25 years, but and I think it's because I go into it with that mindset of doesn't matter what's in here. I mean, I've been to some places. I went to one church where on the front of the church door they said no speaking, one censoring, and it was like a convent. But the point is, I went in there with my energy, and obviously, I just blew it out the water because I can't hold myself, can't hold my own water. But what I'm saying is, I think in those situations, you've got to be massive. Your energy has got to really go boom. And that's why every time I go out and prepare myself, I go with the same intention of no matter what is in that place, we're going to blow it out the doors. Not because I'm smart or I'm clever, so I don't get bad night. Because I refuse to work with spirit in a place that's got dodgy energy. Not doing it. So therefore, as they see me coming in, the naughties or the miserable spirit or the miserable energy, whatever's in there, really wants to be leaving. Because my intention is I'm bigger than better than you. Not because I'm being a smart ass, because I know what my guides and what my team have got. And that is why, again, when we come back to who you're working with.
Yeah.
When my team open up, I know they knock the ball out the ballpark. And again, and then obviously, me and them obviously work well because I've got the big mouth that they require. And I don't mind that, but we've had to work at it.
There's an interesting question here, Jenny, actually, that I'm going to bring up because it sort of is exactly what you're talking about. And it's from Sue Eckersley, I think. And it says, when first trying to contact with your guides, how do you know it's really them and not imposters?
Good one. Good one. So, I always teach my students when we're getting to this point of understanding guides, we actually ask them to go into a meditation and I guide them through it. And I always explain to people that if you use the center of the clock and 12 o'clock in front and 6 o'clock behind and 3 o'clock to your right and 9 o'clock to your left, from 12 all the way around to 6, that is where, because it's the right-hand side of God. So the right-hand side of your spirit, your auric field, for me, and you can always, and I'm telling you now, you try this, you will always see who works with the psychic and who works with the spirit. All the spirit that come from the highest and the brightest will always come in on the right-hand side, from the front of you all the way to the 6 o'clock position. And usually from, say, 12 o'clock to 15:15 is where all your spirit and your family and your friends are going to come in, and the ancestral links. And from 15:15 to 30:30 is where you're going to get all your guides, your helpers, your inspirers. Now, your main guide is going to be stood right behind you. And then from the 6 o'clock all the way to 1:45 is where all your darkness sits, all your shadow work sits. And then from 1:45 back up to midnight, or 12 o'clock, is where, let's say, any anger on us and those that we may have to discuss. So when you're actually learning to clear your energy and do your shadow work, you then start to learn what's you and what isn't. And that's obviously many weeks of learning your energy. So when we get to that point of learning who your guides are, the student by which time would know their energy. so they're going to know themselves. So then we start to open the doors to the spirit. So then I take them through a meditation into a room that we create. And in that room, there might be chairs and tables. We make it as nice as you possibly want. And then we go to their doors and then we open those doors. And we call to the spirit. And we know then, and even either way now, knowing that we've got right for the right hand side of God and we've got left, which is the earthly energy, is to the lower realms. So either way, as your energy sits, the center of you is going to be to the highest source. So as we'll call for that higher source to open the doors, the energy then will open and the door will open. And you'll feel that energy comes in. At what point it comes in is very valuable. Because if it comes in from dead ahead of you to the right hand side of you, they will come in and you'll know, and then you start to ask them certain questions. Do you work with the highest and the brightest? Do you work with Father our God, the one true living God? Because the naughties can't lie. I mean, there's nothing to say they can't, because that's why they're called tricksters. The point being is, you'll feel it. You'll feel that unconditional love that comes in on that right hand side, all the way to the back of you. If obviously they come in and let's say on the clock there's sort of 5 to the hour or a couple of minutes to the hour or anywhere on your left hand side, we ask them to be removed. And we basically do this and we ask them to step in and outside of the aura. Once we get to the point of where we understand there's a guide coming in and we're asking them certain questions. Do you work with the highest and the brightest? Are you here for my highest purpose? And you'll feel this energy. And each time we'll ask them to step out. And as they step out and ask them to step back in, you'll feel exactly the same energy. You might get colour, you might get a feeling, you might get knowledge, you might hear them. You may, if you're lucky enough to see them. But you will know that energy that comes in, because they're not going to come in on the right hand side if they're from the highest. If they are naughty. I'll say that now. It's just not going to happen. If on the other hand they come in, you know the energy because it's colder. It's a more it's like a freezed energy. It's an energy of heaviness. It's an energy that you really don't want standing around you. Of course, if they stand in and go, "Oh, I'm your new guide," therefore now this is where the medium has to learn their discernment. And they have to discern, is this the type of energy I want around me? Does this make me feel empowered?
Yeah.
Because this energy right now is making me feel really down, making me feel quite depressed. And then they've got to start asking themselves, what is my mental state the last few days that has drawn this left-hand energy to me? Mm. Because if that is the case, we've got 1,001 and more spirits that are waiting to take the place of any one of your guides. And this for me is a very fine, because learning to give that permission to your guides, because it's not very easy taken away once you've given it. It really isn't. So if you've really got to work on what these questions are. For me, there's about 3 or 4 that I would ask. Do you work for the highest and the brightest? And each time you say it, you should get an immediate response. Again, with it, whether it's felt or smelt, or you see something or you hear it, but you'll get an immediate response. If there's not an immediate response, you shut it down there and you clear everything.
It's all part of the learning, though, as well, isn't it?
Of course it is,
Jenny, because it's all part of that learning experience. But you know, you have what I've had over the years as well, where you've had other people that would come to me and say, "Oh, do you know that you've got a new guide?" And I'm straight away. First of all, that's between me and my spirit team, and my spirit team will tell me if there's a change, not you. So there's also other people playing roles as well to test your discernment, to trust in what you're picking up. And this is why building up a strong relationship with your spirit team is key. So don't rush and that can take years. That can take bloody years to develop.
In 2000, when I first started working, first and foremost, Spirit said to me, "You're going to be a healer first." I had to go off and I had to learn aromatherapy, reflexology, all the holistic trades, and then I went off to university. By the time through 2007 come and I'd finished university, that's when they said to me, "Pull everything away and go and sit in the conservatory." I had thousands of pounds of oils and beds and stones and crystal, everything. I said, "What do you mean?" They went, "You've done 7 years of healing. Your time now is up. We're going to start teaching you to be a medium." And this is where, again, I'd been learning to be a medium, but not successfully. And this is where, honestly, you need to learn your team. And it took me 7 years up to that point of learning what it was to heal me, what the healing energy was, how they were going to work with me through that healing energy so I could pick up and know exactly what I was feeling. When I took somebody's foot, I knew exactly where the pain was because they'd shown it me. And it's learning to understand that. Honestly, my guys always said to me, I used to draw them. That is a big learning tool. Actually sitting and just drawing an outline of the body and just sitting and just pull anybody to one side and say, "Sit there while I practice on you." Get some crayons, get some chalks, and just make somebody sit there and keep their mouth shut. And you ask your guides, show me the colours, show me where, show me why. Is it a dark blue? Is that because it's aching? Is that, and ask questions. Learn what the colours, what the frequencies are. Why are you picking that? Because, you know, we teach people colour, we teach people, but unless you practice it, I got a job by doing that. And actually just saying to the lady, "Give me a foot." And while she was interviewing me, I was doing a reflexology on her feet. Because again, it was so she could see that I could work with these mental health people because I could pick up the energy and put them at their ease. But the point being is, it took me 7 years to do that. And I'm proud to say I was a healer first because it helped me heal me. I had to do all the shadow work. And it's not a case of I did it 7 years for 7 years. I don't have to do any now. It's continuous all the way through. As soon as something comes up on it. It's just the way it is. You've got to go through all of these. And by asking your guides, you're asking them to step in. And each time you ask them, always, I have certain questions. Sorry, I know I'm going off, but I just wanted to finish that bit off about the guides. Each time we open, even though I've accepted each guide, and we do this for each guide. Don't forget, we do this for each guide. We don't just say collectively, if one's in, you're all in. You do it for each one. You find out what job they've got. One's a protector. One might be bringing into philosophy. One might be doing your healing. And then they might step away while somebody else steps in. And this is all your learning curve. But each time you do the same process. You never get a new guide without and one just tips up and says, "I'm here." You go through the same process. Is he for me? He may have been sent to actually see whether you're ready for a step up. And you're just accepting anybody. Spirit from the highest will also use the ones on the lowest to see how far you've come.
Absolutely.
So, and they will let a trickster in to try and see whether or not if Jenny's listening today. So when I got to open up, we have a set procedure. And if that procedure changes anywhere in there, I shut down. And then we open up again. And I'll give it 3 times, 4 times. If I can't open up after that, I go home. Thank God, touch wood, we've never really got to that point. But I've had to. I've had to stand outside a church and they're waiting for me to start. But something wasn't right. And we have a set lot of questions that each guide goes through before I open up and say, "Right, we're ready for work." And if it doesn't sound right, if it doesn't feel right, if something is not right, we stop and we retrace our steps. It's all because if that's not right, the rest of the night's not going to be right.
This is where I think when you work in with spirit, this is why sort of development is so crucial. Taking time, if it takes 10 years, if it takes 20 years, but also want to make the point of the importance of curiosity. I think people don't ask enough questions when you open. Spirit love when we are curious, when we ask. Don't just sit. I always say you don't work for spirit, you work with spirit. You are a team.
Yes.
And you build
team
up that
effort.
relationship. You're tuning into that frequency. And I want to know who I'm tuning into here. But again, being curious, and this is where it's important. Ask questions. If it doesn't feel right, it most likely it isn't. Trusting your intuition, trusting that energy. But if you've not done, if you're liking people that haven't had that development, imagine yourself being a balloon. You're ungrounded. You're going to sway to anywhere, any frequency. But if you know who you are, you're grounded. You're anchored in your I am power. You know how to hold that light. But Jenny, I want to mention as well, it's something that one of our guides passionately spoke about in some previous circles, Chris, in other development circles. Albert saying, anybody that really wants to be a medium, step into healing first. Learn how to heal yourself. Be a master of energy. That's where you're really going to learn about lighting your own shadow, your own darkness, and then open yourself up. I think it's a great grounding healing. I'm very passionate with healing.
And even though I don't do nowhere near enough as healing as I did back in the day, because obviously learning to be a reflexologist, aromatherapist, because I came out of the army, I was ill and I knew I had to heal me. And I could have gone to the doctor and could have got loads of tablets and would have been down a different road by now. The point being is, I knew I had to start from ground zero and build myself back up. And I put myself in that. And I went out and I learned everything I possibly, and I put myself in old lady, like residential homes. And I put myself in those situations to learn from these ladies and gents and the younger people. And it doesn't matter what age of people it was. If there was something wrong, I wanted to bash at it. And I learned how to be a very good reflexologist, very good aromatherapist. No matter what I did, I always put 100% in. And I ended up knowing that and understanding me. And when you're working, and then I went off to work with mental health, because again, I knew in my healing history, I was up to that point in me to work through my mental health, because I suffered with depression and anxiety. And I knew I had to crack that one. And all of a sudden, I ended up working with children. And this was after 7 years. And Spirit said, right, we got you to where you need. Right, let's start you. You're learning off now with Spirit. And I'd already been a medium for a couple of years. Only doing the same church here. And I had so many churches, but it was the same ones all the time. There's only about 7 of them. But I weren't enjoying it. I was, but I wasn't, because I couldn't be me. And that's where they said, now pull away. Now we'll teach you to be the medium we need you to be. Because I had 7 years, 8 years of learning healing. And it is the biggest and the best grounding I think you need, because it helps you to center, it helps you to ground, it helps you to keep you mentally focused. And it helps you to also actually put that ego to one side, because this is nothing to do with you when you're doing healing. It is purely about the person on the table, sat in front of you, whatever the situation may be, between you, or so should I say them, their guides, your guides, and you are just the facilitator. And that is where you learn then to step away from it all.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think what comes to mind as well is, because with the previous question, I've had experiences, when people talk about how we discern energies, and I've had things that look very pretty that I've seen. Spiritually are very angelic to the eyes, and I go, oh, I don't like that feeling, I feel sick.
Yeah.
And I will trust the feeling over what
you see,
what I'm getting visually, because everything glitters isn't gold, like we've said before. Exactly. But I also want to touch on with that, and I feel like you both touched on that point of doing that inner work and knowing who we are through healing practices. And I feel what that assists us with something really big, which is deciding or knowing what energy belongs to you and what doesn't. Because what you can get when you talk about light and dark, I feel, is blaming everything on the dark. Well, they've got it in for me and it's all me. And it actually might be, well, actually, you've not got your stuff together. You don't know who you are. And that's why things are shaky.
That comment where, well, if it's meant for me, I'll just have to take it. No.
Yeah.
And they're setting themselves up to accept energy that doesn't belong to them.
Mm.
And it may, well, if it's for me, or what's the other one? If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. No. If it don't feel right, don't have it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It makes me, years ago, obviously, well, if it's meant to be. And I got to a point in the end that I just thought, well, why is it meant to be? And when I put it to spirit, and they went, well, we didn't bring it. It makes you stop and think, well, who did? And the book stops at you because you're the physical.
Yeah.
You're the physical person. And yes, you're a spirit in a physical body, but at the end of the day, the book stops with you. Because what we draw here on the earth plane is, because spirit are not going to draw that to us, because we're here, we're the ones anchored to the earth.
Yeah.
So what we draw on the earth plane is our interpretation, because we are a co-creator to God. So our energy that's connected here on the earth plane is therefore drawing the lower energies. We don't get all the way to spirit and say to God, well, actually, can you draw a bit of this in? Because we're connecting with the God of that world, but the God of this world is also trying to get us onto his side. So, and even though we're co-creators and we've got this beautiful energy of light and dark, this is why we got the centering. The centering is so you can keep straight and narrow and go forward. You can always turn around and go backwards, but you don't get you nowhere. So it's about understanding what the darkness is. And we call it darkness, call it what you want. We understand what the lower side is because it's there. It has to be there. Because if everything was light and the amount of mediums that you hear, and you lads have heard it, everything sparkles in the spirit. Shut up. It drives me insane. The naughties have got to be there. They don't have to be, but they're here doing a job, whether we like it or not. And it's to keep us anchored, and it's to teach us some of the best lessons you're ever going to come across.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean we need to open the door and have a free-for-all. It's a learning discernment. You don't go to bed at night and leave your front door open and your back door open and hope nobody's going to come in and rob you. Because if you give them an inch, they'll take a yard, because that is their duty. That is their job. Our job is to know when they've stepped in. And when that ends, and and if you learn your guides and you get this power between you and the right-hand side, you will understand it. Because when anybody steps in that is foreign to you on the left-hand side, because just think you've got like 30 minutes, because I always put it in minutes because people can understand it. You've got 30 minutes from the top all the way down to this number 6. All that energy there is a vast amount of energy. It only doesn't look a lot, but it's a vast amount of energy around you that your guides can come in at. But we've got the same amount of energy on the left-hand side, which again is open to all the lower energies, whether that's thought forms, emotional forms, physical forms, whatever you're invited in, whatever you're mixed up in. All that has the potential. And that, to me, is where a lot of mediums have got this veil that seems to go in both worlds for them. There's no clear distinction of who they're working with.
Doesn't it come as well, Jenny? It's something I don't know why it's just come back to me. Is when, on a personal note, when I ever feel a bit off sorts or energetically off, one of the best techniques I was taught was actually from an animal guide, actually, the eagle. And you showing me that, in life as a spirit worker, it is the importance of observing rather than getting mixed into the energy set. You showed me the importance of frequency, how easily we can distract ourselves from that lower frequency, and the best thing to do is rise above and watch and observe. Sometimes that eagle energy comes in and flaps the wings, and it reminds me just to that upliftment that needs. So on the energetic side, again, it's something that I've created with my relationship with my guides, but also some animal guides. Do you work with some animal guides as well?
Yeah. I've got an elephant.
Wow.
And I very rarely see him, and there's also a wolf. But every time I open up, I actually see my horse, Magnum.
Wow.
And from the moment now for years, and this, I'll tell you this quickly, but I have 3 guides. Then there was a space, and that space was there for, 10, 15 years. And then there's another 2 guides. And we have this set way of opening up each and every time, and they answer these questions to me. And it's the way they say it, it's the way they come across. And each time I say to them, fill that gap, close that gap up. I don't like that gap being there. And they just take the notice of me. And this went on. I kept saying to them, who's going to be in that place? And then obviously, many people know we took on this big white horse, Magnum. And in 2022, he passed the spirit. And my heart was broke because, he was a bit, anyway, he was a beautiful horse, like a Victor Meldrew, but in horse form. But the point being is that from the moment he steps onto spirit, I came home, we cried, we all upset. But the next day I was out working and I sat and I opened up to spirit. And at that, the doors opened and John came in and Victor came in and Mira came in. And all of a sudden, the big white horse came walking in and he filled the gap. And he just stood there proud. And the tears just run down my face. And I knew for 10, 15 years, this gap was waiting for him, even though we never had the horse up to that point. We only had him for 5 years. But the gap was waiting for 15 for him to step into it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then my other guides are there. And so every night now when I open up to say hello to each one of them. And I get to him and he puts his head down. I put mine down. And we just rub foreheads. And then I say, you're going to look after me today. And he just moves in such a way that I know. He just moves his body to my right-hand side. And I say, thank you. And then we carry on and we open up with the other guides. Everybody then is in their place. There is no gaps. Do you know what I mean? And yet they've been waiting for 15 years for that horse that was here on the earth that we never knew to fill that gap.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean? And it's just, honestly, and the strength of him. And I've actually had other spiritual people say, there's a big white horse stood next to you. And that is massive. There's only very rare I see me elephant. And I think it's when I need that push. Nobody else has really seen the elephant. Other people have said they've seen the wolf. But again, it's only when it's really, really needed. But Magnum is there front and centre each and every time.
Amazing.
Honestly, I couldn't believe it when I saw him. And he's always there. The minute the door opens, big white horse comes walking in.
Wow.
Honestly,
It just shows you the power of love. The love that animals bring in your spiritual work as well. I think that's very powerful. Do you pick up on the mediumship side? Are you quite aware of animals? Do you bring a lot of animals through in your mediumship as well?
Yeah. I've had horses, dogs, cats, rabbits. I actually had a bloke who worked with a rhinoceros that came in at a zoo. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, to me, we've had tortoises come in. You know what I mean? It's vast. If people have had animals, then they either get shown to me, or then I hear the voice. I don't think it is the animal. It most probably is, maybe, but it's their thought forms. I should imagine it's their thought words. I don't get a dog coming in going, "Hello, missus, can you just tell me Magnum?"
maybe.
Possibly. But I get that feeling of love. And I have had a horse, actually, saying all that many, many years ago. I had a horse come in, and I love it when horses come in because they put their head right over your shoulder. And I was doing this lady's feet. And at the time, Spirit said to me, "Tell her that her horse is here." I said, "Oh, no, can't do that. I'm doing reflexology, sorry." So there I am doing reflexology. And then they're saying, "Well, you must tell her this." And I said, "No, I'm doing reflexology." And I kept saying this. And in the end, my guy said to me, "You're here to heal." I said, "Yes, and that's what I'm doing. Thank you." Then tell her what we want you to tell her. So I said, yes, but she might not understand what I'm trying to bring across. I said, I'm working to be a medium. She might not understand it and might not like it. He said, tell her. Find a way and tell her. So I ended up saying, oh, you never guess. I went to one of them crazy places the other night. And she went, oh, what was that? Oh, one of them spiritualist churches. She went, oh, God, I love them. I went, oh, thank God for that. And I gave her this message and I said, this blooming big horse has put his head over me. And the horse then, I actually heard this horse. I heard him. I did hear him in my head. And he turned around. The message he gave was, she came and she gave me all her woes. And every day I stood there and I loved listening to everything she had to say. And you know what? She burst into tears and she said, Jenna, I can put my socks on now and go home. She said, because I needed to hear from my horse.
Wow.
And all the time
how
Spirit was
beautiful.
saying to me, will you speak to her? And I'm going, oh no, because I'm in a healing mode. And she's not here for that. But of course, healing comes on every level.
It's everything, isn't it? Really,
Everything.
it's
me thinking I'm just doing her feet.
100%. And
But mine was the grounding spike. Spirit was doing the healing.
And I'm pleased you mentioned before, Jenny, when we talked about, light or lower energies, about everything has its place as well. These things are here. They're all created as parts of the universe. We know the yin and the yang as part of the balance. It's all part. And if, balance too far one way or another, that's where we get ourselves have issues. And when we talked about opening up, something that was mentioned to myself and Stephen, actually, when we first got in the circle that we were in for many, many years. And before we got there, they had a bit of an issue with somebody who really wanted to work as a trance medium. And they would sit there and they'll say, I will work with anyone. And they weren't speaking bad of this lady, but they were saying that's a very good teaching, because if you say you want to work with anyone, you're opening the doors and anyone will come. And that counts for anything. Whether you're at home doing something, that is a great bit of teaching to take on. If you ask for anyone, you're going to get anyone.
And you'd be surprised the times I've spoken to up-and-coming mediums, fledglings, and especially after a service, obviously they'll all like to come over and have a chit-chat. And they'll say to me, how do you know your guides? And then they start to gesture and they start to talk about their guides. And again, like I was saying before, the moment that you get up out of that chair to start a service or do any spirit work, watch the way your body moves. Watch how you gesture. I'm doing this now, my left-hand side. Yes? So the moment I've started talking about the left-hand side, I've started to gesture with my left hand. So subconsciously now, I'm moving in that manner. Because now I'm drawing it in. And even my hands are drawing it in. The point being is, when you're working on the psychic, which is obviously the first three chakras, which is then connected to your rooting system, which therefore is connected to the right-hand side, the left-hand side, which is the female energy, up to the neck point, because that is then obviously Mother Earth. She gives us everything, and the lady's energy is to the earth plane. Within that segment, whatever energy you put out, I don't care. My guides, and they're doing all this, and they're moving when they're working with spirit, they're moving to their left. You watch. Seriously, you watch any medium, and I'm telling this to everybody. You go and sit in a church and watch a medium work. The minute they get out of their chair, the minute I'm saying this, but that's when I switch off. The minute the medium gets up, if by the end of their first message, they haven't stopped moving to their left and stopped gesturing to their left, even the way their feet are pointing, to the way I'm done. Because now I know you're not going to lift the energy any higher than that.
Yeah.
Because once it becomes up to past the sacral, you now shut on the solar plexus. We should now be bringing it into the heart. By the time that first message is over, it should be coming and oozing through you. And those mediums that work with the highest and the brightest, you watch them as well. Because the minute they get out their chair and they go, hello, everybody, should we go into prayer? and they move and they start to gesture to their right hand side, you know you're going to get a good night because they're working with spirit, and they'll move to their right, they'll gesture to the right, they take everything, they're hearing and they're talking, and you can hear them here, and they're gesturing to their ears or whatever they're doing. They're moving to their right hand side. The minute that they drop into a psychic, they go into their left. You watch the energy, and I'm telling you, you will see it being done. And they don't know they're doing it. And the up and coming mediums of today don't understand this. And God bless them, it's not their fault, because they're being taught just to open up, and whoever speaks to you, accept them. No.
100%. We've got another question here, actually, Jenny. That's an interesting one. It's from Lisa, and it says, "Can I ask why some spirits do not cross over?"
Yes, good one, that, Lisa. So, again, let's just take a scenario. Let's say you've got a short, fat Uncle Fred. He drinks, he smokes, he tells the odd naughty jokes. He's pops over to the spirit realm. But when he was here, let's say Fred has been brought up understanding about heaven and hell, and he might have done things in his life that he's not very proud of. And obviously we've got people that are passing over with drink, drugs, and there's thousands of one situations that are of a lower energy. So let's just assume Uncle Fred, let's say he's not the nicest of men, but he's not a bad man neither. And he steps into the spirit, and then he's into that space. He's neither up or he's neither down. Because in his mindset, he is now scared. He may have been scared before death, because the majority of people are. And therefore, he's taking that fear with him. Everything we're talking about is about fear program. So this is about taking that fear. He knows his body is dying. He knows, and at the back of his mind is, my God, I may not have believed in any of this. I don't believe in God, but I've been taught from being a boy about heaven and hell. I am now going to go to hell. So let's say he goes into the spirit realm with that fear. He's holding that fear, and it consumes him. It's so much that actually when the spirit comes to take him home, he pulls away and says no, because he's still got free will at that point. No. And he'll shield himself from the light, because now he's going to be taken to judgment. That's the mental. That's what he's taking with him. I'm going to be judged by God. And now it's like, no, I'm not going. And they pull away from their own guides, from their own spirit that are trying to take them home, because they're scared. So now he's in this place of, it's like a grey area, as I've been shown it from spirit. It's almost like when you stood on the stage and you see the light shining on you, but it's not actually a light, but it's like a grey. It's like a greyness. There's no light, there's no dark, there's nothing. It's just you, because now your guides are over there because you've pushed them away. But in the darkness that's beyond that, you know it doesn't sound good neither. So you've got your guide saying to you, come on, Fred, you need to come home. But he's scared. Now we can start to draw in lower entities who are going to go, oh, are you, Fred? Do you want to stay here with us? We'll look after you, Fred. And of course, he'll navigate towards those, because they're scared too, because they'll give him the same energy as what Fred's scared with. Fred, we didn't go neither because we were scared, because God's going to judge us. Stay here with us, Fred. So Fred decides to stay where he is, because it's equal. It's better than going downstairs and shoveling coal. Or is it easier to go and have your judgment? So he's going to stay where he is. And he may be locked into a place. It might be Fred's house, his little 2-bedroom house that he's in. He might be scared because he's missing his wife. Well, there's many situations. But the point being is, Fred is now filled with fear. The lower realms will keep Fred entertained and say, yes, Fred, stay here with us. In which case then his energy is being diminished, because now he can no longer hear his own guides calling to him, because the two cannot exist in the same space. You can't have lower and higher all in the same space, because if you walk into a dark room, you switch the light on, the darkness disappears. So now Fred is deciding to sit in the dark because he can't find the light switch, in theory. So he's listening to what's in the darkness, and then they become more familiar to him as his new set of friends, i.e. guides, because they're going to guide him and keep him in their world. But his guides have not finished talking neither. Fred's guides are just outside of that energy, and they're still talking, but Fred can't quite hear them because obviously the noise or the vibration that's coming from the lower is going to drum out any noise coming from the higher. So what the higher do is say, right, we need to get Fred some help. It might be 2 weeks later, it could be 20 years later, but they never stop looking for somebody to come and help Fred. So in the end, they may then say, right, well, speak to Sally next door, who's got a friend called Jenny, who can nip round and help Fred. And that is how then we go from being a medium into a rescuer, because then we can go round and we sit and we talk with Fred, and we then bring over to him that actually, Fred, there's no judgment. And your lovely wife, who you're looking for because you're scared, is actually calling for you if you used to just listen.
Why, just 1 second, Jenny, why would, I know the answer to this, but anybody that's watching would say, wow, if they're not listening to the guides, why would they listen to the medium? Is it because he would relate to you more on the physical, that earth plane frequency,
because
than let's say an angel showing themselves?
Yes, if you think, let's say Fred's been there for 10 years. Now, I went to a rescue many years ago, and it was in the middle of Salford, and it'd all been knocked down. It was all these terraced houses. And this gentleman was stuck in the mindset that he was still in his 2-bed terraced house. Yeah. So in his mind, this was his house. Over it, it'd been all knocked down, and a baby's nursery, a kiddie's nursery had been built. And every time the kiddies went into the toilet, they screamed and ran out because Fred would come rushing out at them and go, "Get out of my house!" So what does that tell you? That means Fred is still attached to the earth plane, through lower energy. So therefore, in his mind, he's still living each and every day in that house, waiting for his. And this is the truth. This is as true as it gets. He was in this house, this gentleman, and he got dementia, and all he could remember is his wife. So obviously, when he went over, he was still looking for his wife. He was waiting for us to come home from shopping, and he'd passed. So he's stuck in that moment of looking for his wife. So he'd been in this place for, let's say, 20 years, and everybody who walked in, all the kids went screaming out. But in his mind, when I went in and sat in this toilet and spoke to Fred, all of a sudden his 2-bed terrace opened up, and we were stood in his front room. And Fred saw me and charged at me because he thought he had a ghost in his house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
He saw my energy. He now thinks there's ghosts in my house, and I'm sat here waiting for my wife to come home, and there's bloody ghosts in here. And he charged at me. But because I was more physical, he run into me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So therefore, my job was to sit there and say to Fred, "Okay, Fred, what year is it?" So he told me the year. It was in the 80s. And I said, "Okay, what is your wife's name? Where's she gone?" "Oh, she's gone to the shops." So in my mind now, I'm saying to Spirit, "Bring me Doris," let's call the lady. "Bring me Doris." And he said, and I said, "Do you want to go and put the kettle on?" He said, "No," because I knew Spirit was saying to me, "Try and get him to go into the kitchen." Because there was a front room and then there was a doorway into the kitchen. Try and get him to go into the kitchen. And he wouldn't go in because it was darker in there. So I said to him, "No." I said, "You're going to have Doris." And I turned around to him and I said, "So where is she?" He said, "Oh, she'll be here in a minute." He said, "She'll be coming to the back door with the shopping." He said, "But she's taking her time. I don't know where she is." So that was my cue then to say to Spirit, "Come to the back door with Doris and let her open the door and bring the light in. And as she does so, she can shout his name and we'll all walk in the kitchen together." And that's exactly how we did it. And as I'm talking, so in the end, I had to explain to him, my name is Jenny, I do this, and I do, and he's going, wait, and he's shouting. I said, no, sit down and talk to me. We sat in his front room, we sat and we chit-chatted while I explained it, and I said, the year is, I think it was about 2017 at the time, 2017, and the world has moved on, and you've passed into, and you've got to say, you can't just say, hey, Fred, you know you're dead.
Yeah.
Because it's a massive shock. Especially if you've got someone with dementia and you've got to take them back to the moment of remembering. So you've got to do this with kindness and compassion. Because if this was my granddad, I would want someone speaking to my granddad with compassion.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
he's somebody else's granddad. So then we've just sat there and we've just chatted and he got to like me. And anyway, so, and then and as I'm doing that, I'm also talking to my guides. Bring in spirit. And all of a sudden from there, the back door opened and she shouted, Fred, where are you? And he went, oh, he said, she's here. We'll have that cup of tea now. I said, come on then. And as he went into the kitchen, the light just came on and he stood there with all the bags and she went, come and give me an hand with these. But the minute he stepped out the back door, he was even stepping into the light. Does that make sense?
Yeah, wow.
100%.
And that is how we do it.
But do you not think, Jenny, as well, this is why I think healing is so important, not just in the collective, but also individually. Why forgiveness, why letting go of grudges, forgive people that have hurt you, why that is so powerful. So we don't have to feel stuck when we go home to spirit. I know certain circumstances with dementia and certain illnesses and children that, you have to have rescue there, but why healing and forgiveness is so important now more than ever.
I've done so many on sitting and just talking to spirits. I'm saying people, but they've all been people at some point who have taken resentment home with them, hatred, unforgiveness, and it really, you've got abuse, you've got addictions, and this is all due down to something that happened many years ago, which brought them to this situation. So you've got to work your way back with them. And sometimes it's not the first time neither. You've got to go back and go back. Just because you expect to walk into somebody's house and say, right, come on. Yes, of course, it's a different subject. If they're naughty, then we walk in and if they want to fight, then the fight we have. But more, I've got to say, 90% of the time, I'd say 95, 97% of the time, it's somebody who is just stuck.
I agree with that one,
You need to sit down and speak to them as if there was your own family. Because if that was one of your family members who, they say, committed suicide, or it doesn't matter, they've taken resentment, or they can't cope with the feeling of hurt, unforgiveness, whatever that feeling is that they're taking with them, it's a massive subject to sit down and talk to somebody you don't know about and to make them see sense. It's massive because forgiveness is one of the hardest things to talk about.
It is. But remember, Jenny, being sometimes speaking to a stranger, I know that part of counselling, psychotherapy, when you don't really listen to your family much, do you? You try and ignore them, and actually listening to a stranger, somebody called Jenny Moore coming in, and in a way, with the word rescue, we're not actually physically taking them into the light. We are encouraging them to take themselves into the light.
Do you know the way
with that bread?
Do you know what comes to mind just as you're talking there, Jenny, is helping them to remember what they already know.
And
to dig it out.
And sometimes some of the biggest things is taking it. I mean, whatever they've taken or gone over to the spirit with, whether it's unforgiveness or hatred or resentment or Alzheimer's, dementia or cancer, because even illness can stop them from going home because they can't stand the thought that they've died with such an illness. So there's many, many situations. My job, if you want to give it that, my duty is to take that person to the best day, the last day of their lives that was the best day for them. to remember who they was, to remember the love they had, to remember the people they've got, because then they start to yearn for that. So you take them to the point of, you know, they've got a lovely mother in the spirit. Let's take you to go talk to me about your mum, talk to me about your brothers, whoever that might be, your lovely lady or your children or whoever that might be to the spirit. Let's get you to that point where you can remember them with fondness and love, because you'll see the energy change. And once the energy change, that's where then you have to start reminding them. Because when I was saying about that grey place, a lot of the time you have to try to explain to somebody that is mentally stuck. So people with, say, severe depression, anxiety, they're stuck in that set. And it's so hard to try and convince them today's going to be a good day. We all know that. And when you're in that place, it's the hardest thing to say. If you've suffered with depression, the hardest thing is for somebody else to say, tomorrow's going to be better. Shut up, because you don't want to hear it. So my duty for me is to actually to say to them, well, you're in this grey space. And they'll say to me, yeah, but I'm not dead. You know, we've talked about this. What if you passed over? No. So then I start to say to them, do you remember the colour of grass? Of course I do. It's green. But where is the grass? So let's start to picture grass. And when you start to bring in colour, you make them believe and see colour. And you start to bring it in. Do you remember walking in the hills? Or the beach? You ask them, you know, because they're not stupid. Oh, I love sitting on the sand. So right, let's go to the beach then. And we start to bring in that scene around them. And we ask them to remember what it was to smell. Because, of course, when you get to the point of where feel your own breath, they can't feel their breath because there isn't one. And that is when sometimes then they understand that they have stepped into the death. And you've got to bring them round to that in the most beautiful way you can, because it's a shock. And then you're going to say to somebody who's been stood in the dark for all that time, now I'm going to turn the light on. Hello. Again, fear. You can't just go switching a light on when somebody's been sat in the dark, intense dark, or a grey area, and they've not seen light for goodness knows how long. You can't just go switching the light on and hoping that they're not going to go, oh, because that's what all of us would do. So bit by bit, then we start to bring in the light brighter and brighter and brighter until the guides are stood right back in front of them again.
Yeah, it's like
such a beautiful journey to draw somebody from that darkness and bring all that energy in to the point of where the sun now is shining around them. They can feel the heat of their God, their love of their God, that unconditional love.
It's and like you mentioned with anything, Jenny, it's like you mentioned when people who are very, very depressed on the earth, and you can't just you know, it's a terrible term. Anybody who says snap out of it, you know, that isn't
pull your socks up.
To me, it's incremental with anything like what you're explaining there, whether it's spirit or here, it's like peeling an onion. If you do it straight away, it's too much. So we're gently peeling back those layers, back those layers, and it's important work. I mean, but I don't know why, but a bit of a funny tale come to me that one night in the circle we were in, and we do some deeper work, shall we say, in the second part originally, and there was a couple that used to come in. I'm sure it was two men in spirit, and they used to come into the circle and say, "Oh, what are you doing here tonight?" And they'd say, "Oh, she's got them round again with the holy water and all that, so we're coming here for a bit to get a bit of peace." And I'll tell you, they must have been brought in for a reason, because we do quite heavy work and it lightened things. That, and because we used to at one time in a circle, and this might be something people can relate to, and it was more so the couple that brought us into this work at one time, they used to feel bad for laughing in the circle, going, "Oh, we're being disrespectful and all this." But what they learned is the laughter came if it got a bit too dense in the group with the work, and it lifted the energy a bit. But they came in more than once and they said, "Oh, she got the priest round again tonight, so we're nipping out for a bit."
But doesn't that make you just I don't know, I just find that lovely when they want to rather come and stand in your circle than stay at home because the priest has turned up. Do you know what I mean? But I've so many times that we've been out, and I mean, sometimes you can't help everybody's first time, and you can't help them 20th time neither. You know, that goes for the physical people, but also some of the spirit people. Some of them don't want to be going on. Some of them really don't want to go home. And no matter how much I want to try and drag them home, not all the time are they ready neither. Just because I've come across a spirit, not necessarily are their team ready to take them home. Because it may be their karmic learning. It may be their lesson that they've got to learn in the spirit.
Yeah.
And then you've got the naughties, Jenny, as well. You've got the naughties. But what we found in our circle,
and there's another big subject.
There were, and as they come into the circle, that lower frequency, what they don't realize is the time that they've spent in our circle, their light within them become a little bit brighter, and they won't be able to go back to that dark frequency.
Exactly.
And then they used to get really miffed the week after. I can't go back there. And then they're bright, even it's the arrogance, but then before they know it, it's the defenses are dropped. Because I believe no matter how dark you are, there is a light within you. There is a flicker of light within every soul.
Yeah, it's within us. And if you was created, I don't care if you're a fallen angel, there's still a spark of divinity within you. And once you can light that, I always go out with that in my mind. No matter what's out there, if there's a spark of divinity still within them, it can still be relit. And to me, every, and we all know everybody, even in the spirit, I know there's obviously a certain few naughties that'll never be given a second chance up above. But there's a certain few layers will always, as long as they call for help, there'll always be a spirit hand that will try and rescue them. And sometimes we've had to go into some of those darker places and really dig deep and help some of these spirits that may have been in situ for 200-300 years. You know, they're in that energy, and they've been scaring people for that length of time. You know, we did one in Blackpool, a few years ago, and it's with a medium. He's passed now. For the life of me, I can't remember his, but anyway, lovely fella. Anyway, we was asked to go upstairs. Was in this hotel, and the lead medium, whose night it was, which we all went round, and then she said, "Right, we're all going to sit in a circle now," because everybody had walked around the hotel. I'd got to this room, they said number 24, and they'd all been strangled in it. I shouldn't laugh, but everybody's been strangled. So everybody was going in the room to get strangled. I mean, go figure. So, you know, somebody came out and went, "Oh, yeah, somebody's just had me by the throat. Oh, let me go in." And they're all going in. One by one, they're all coming screaming out because this thing was grabbing them by the throat. Anyway, so this lead medium went, "Oh, rightio, I'm going to do an open circle." Jenny and, oh God, let's call him Fred. Jenny and Fred are going to go upstairs and do that clearance. Yeah, thanks. Because nobody wanted to go in this room. So anyway, me and Fred goes upstairs. And before my guide said to me, now Fred was a big fella. He was about 6'2", massive, big tiger, like a big teddy bear. Do you know what I mean? Somebody you'd look at and you'd think, God, you'd be scared of him. But the most beautiful out. Anyway, my guide said to me, "My John, when you go in there, do not let go of his hands, because he will have them round your throat." Yeah, thanks. So I said to him, when we go in there, if you want, you go into a slight trance. I'll draw whatever it is through you. We'll see what's going on. I said, but if you let go of my hands, I'll have to kick you in the bollocks. And I said that to him, and he went, "Oh, okay, Jenna." I said, because if you put your hands around my throat, the only way I'm going to get your hands off is to kick you in the bollocks. Anyway, he laughed and he said, "Yeah, right." So we went in, we opened up, we put our prayers up, and we shut the doors. It was as black as hell. Even though there was a window there, the room went black. And I'm holding his hands, and my guide's with me, and he's talking me all the way through it. And to be fair, I was a bit crapping myself because obviously everybody has just had the run. And he said, "Do put your fear away now." So anyway, I did exactly what I was told. I held this fella's hands. We started to draw in the spirit, and we're in a black room. And all of a sudden, the black shadow within the black room got big, and it went up the wall and across the ceiling. And I'm stood there. I could feel my own heart drop. And my John, who's, to be fair, he puts up with a lot, but he's dead hard. And he helped, and he just said to me, "Do not let go." Anyway, I started chit chatting to this gentleman, and all of a sudden, and he started to speak to me about this entity through Fred's mouth, and it got to the point of that he was in the 1776 or something. Anyway, he'd been to war. He'd come back. Well, I say he'd come back. He hadn't actually come back, but spirit-wise, he'd come back. And all these people were coming into this house, this room. He'd found sanctuary in this one room in this hotel that had been there for, say, 200 years. He'd found sanctuary in it. And everybody who's coming in it were getting thrown out of the bed. So I asked him why. He said, because it's my house. This little room, this little box room up in the attic was he's found sanctuary. And then he opens this up in my head. And he was a soldier, and he wore a different uniform, obviously, from the 1700s. And I said to Spirit, how are we going to get him over there? And they said, you're an ex-squaddy, Jenny. Think about it. And what I had to do, I had to tell him that I was an ex-squadder or an ex-soldier. And this fella said to me, no, you're not. Because obviously back in the 1700s, there was no women in the army. So I then, to convince him, so Spirit then put a uniform on me. And I said, oh, yes, I am. I said, and over there is your medical tent. I said, and you need medical. He said, yes, I do. I said, and who's that on the floor next to you? He said, that's my friend. I said, well, pick your friend up. I said, and we'll go and find some aid. And this is how we had to do it again. And he picked up his friend and he told me, he said, I've carried him. And he's all right. He said, but then he'd been shot in the back. As he was trying to carry his friend out, he'd been shot in the back. And that's how he died. And that's how his friend died in his arms. And that's how the two of them ended up being a spirit. And he was still carrying his friend. So basically, my duty was to get him to this medical tent in this other field. So anyway, and all of a sudden I said to Spirit, I said, well, we need then somebody to drum us home. And all of a sudden, all these drummer boys just turned up and stood in front. And I shouted, by the left. And this fella just picked up his friend and he came to attention. I said, by the left, quick march. And we all marched over to this fence. And all of a sudden, this it's like an opening just opened up. And all these spirit came out in the same uniform and shouted his name and said, where have you been? We've been looking for you. I'm sorry, sir. I've got my friend. They said, get to that medical tent now. And as they do, this gentleman just steps out this opening. He just said, thank you. That'll do. And it's shut. And about 3 months later, the big fella came back and whispered in my ear, thank you.
Amazing. Absolutely incredible.
Honestly, even now, after all these years, it still brings just that. But I could help that man from 17 something. But the thing is, as I walked down the stairs, we cleared the rest of the place. And the medium wasn't too impressed with me because they had another group going next week. But anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, nothing for him to have. So it's been amazing, Jenny. I feel that's the perfect sort of spot to complete everything tonight. It's nearly 2 hours, actually, but I feel there's always so much to talk about in it. So thanks so much for sharing your time. I do want to mention your group that you're starting. Started.
Yes.
So if you want to talk a little bit about that, maybe if you want to share that, first of all.
Yes. Because obviously this subject that we're talking about is sort of poo-pooed. Not just within the spiritualist organisation, but because obviously, and I understand what they're saying, we don't want to come across as if we're dealing with the naughties all the time. But not actually acknowledging them is also the massive mistake you could be making. Because again, as we've tried to sort of put across tonight, there is two sides to every story. There's two sides to every coin. So what's to the left is also to the right. What's up is down. So And for me, I've been doing this, as you guys have, and a lot of mediums I know go out doing rescuing, but nobody wants to talk about it. It's a forbidden subject. So for me now, I've got to that point where we're going to take this subject on. And obviously I was poorly yesterday, but we've started a new Facebook page. It's called SOS Save One Soul. And basically it's on a Sunday, or when we manage, we're going to try and get a medium to come on and talk about their experiences. But I want to do what we're doing tonight, bring out all of this information about what it's like to have an author, what they're actually made of, why are they here. Let people understand them, because it's only in the understanding do you gain the confidence and the strength to overcome anything. Fear is only there when you don't know the other side of the story. And that's what I've tried to show you in a few of these stories, that once that understanding comes, there's no longer any fear. And we have to understand this, because we're living in such a dense energy. And this dense energy at the moment is making us all fearful. And therefore, they're winning the day. And that is where, for me, we have to start to discuss this one subject that nobody else wants to discuss, whether it's in the churches. The amount of times that people have turned up and asked for help, there is nobody in the church who's qualified to do a clearance. I find it absolutely ridiculous. But you go to the Church of England, it doesn't matter what church you go to, nobody knows what they're doing. They have to go and get a specialist. We shouldn't be specialists. We should be here doing what we know.
Yeah.
And we should be talking about this subject. And every one of us should be showing of our examples and experiences and sharing it, so we can all get better knowledge. Because all the knowledge I've got, nobody knows about. Because for all these years, it's always been done under the radar. But every medium I've spoken to in the last few weeks, all their work's under the radar, because nobody wants to talk about it. So I think we should start teaching this and teaching people, because there are other mediums out there who need to know this, because I'm not going to be here forever and a day. Neither are you guys. But somebody has to take the mantle on. Somebody's got to know that this knowledge is before it gets taken from us. So that is what we're trying to do.
100% not knowledge.
You can come on the page, and obviously until the page is 60 days old, I can't go live on there. So it'll just be on my normal Jenny Moore page. But when I go live on there, you'll see it's about saving one soul, and it's all about everything rescue. Everything. You can call it rescue, you can call it clearance, you can call it what you like. But we're saving one soul at a time. If you can save one soul from the spirit, job's done.
Yeah, amazing. So if you'd be able to connect with Jenny if you're interested in that group, I'm sure it'll be very, very interesting as the weeks go by. And as well, in 1 week's time, Jenny's going to be joining us in person. She's doing a demonstration just up the road.
Next week, isn't it?
Yeah, at Fleetwood Bowling Club for those local, and we've still got tickets available as well. So get in touch.
What's that about?
I know.
You need to get out on the prom selling me.
I know. Get the sandwich board out tomorrow. So if you want to see Jenny in live and living colour, get yourself down there. Yeah, it'd be amazing. But it's been great chatting with you tonight, Jenny, as always.
Welcome.
100%. Thanks everybody who's joined us live. And yeah, please continue to share this live and share it with anybody who's interested in everything we've shared tonight. Until we speak again, just want to send lots of thanks and goodbye, everyone. Take care.
See you later, boys. Thank you for having me, Pete.
Thank you.